Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crucial Conversations about Cognitive Diversity, brought to you by Bridges 2E Media and the 2E Centre for Research and Professional Development. My name is Maria Kennedy, and I have the pleasure of being your host. I'm a mom, an educator, and a change maker who has had the pleasure of working globally with an array of different students and their families. Today, we have a unique opportunity to discover strength-based learning. Over the years, I've heard it referred to in many different ways, which is why I'm delighted to have with me today true experts in the field. In fact, you could say they wrote the book on it, because they did. They're going to explain in detail what strength-based learning is, what it is not, and most importantly, how to use it to help students thrive. So before we delve into today's topic, I'm delighted to share today's conversation with two very special people who have and continue to make an incredible difference for 2E students by helping both their teachers and their parents learn how to meet their needs. So I'm delighted to welcome Robin Schader. Robin, please turn your camera on and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Marie. I'm thrilled to be here today. It makes me always a bit uncomfortable, even when we're talking about strengths, to use the word expert, because it feels like maybe I've arrived. And in this field, I really haven't. And that's one of the joys of starting with strengths or looking at strengths, is you're always modifying. You're always going to the next level. So I also am a mom and I'm a grandmother. I really became interested in the world through the world of gifted, into our role as parents and how do we influence children? What makes a difference in developing their talents? And how do we help them see what's there and take hold with it, growing it into something more than anyone could even expect? So I went back from California. I'm in San Francisco, by the way. I went back to the University of Connecticut, and it was there that I met up with Susan Baum. And I think she's going to introduce herself, but we just philosophically aligned and coming at it really from a parent perspective and an expert educator perspective. I'm going to throw that expert out there again. We really have been able to share and argue through our ideas until I think we bring a pretty unique perspective on strengths.
I totally agree. You are both so amazing. And so I'm delighted to welcome our second guest, the amazing Susan Baum. Please, Susan, turn on your camera and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Baum, and yes, I did meet Robin Schader at University of Connecticut, although I had already gotten my degree and I was living nearby, which was really a good thing for our now to be ongoing collaboration. I came to the field of 2E not because of my children, which I have children, but more because I was interested in kids with special needs when I first started teaching in that last century. And little by little, I began to realize that so many of these kids who were identified as learning disabled or ADHD were really smart. And my question was, what would happen if we focus on what they could do instead of what they couldn't do? And that launched my research, my experiences, my thinking, all those many years ago to bring us where we are today. And along the way, I do bring the parent perspective, but more importantly, the teacher perspective to our partner
Ooh. Our internet's running. Uh-oh. Susan and my internet
to
is
share the synthesis of a lot of our experiences.
Uh-oh.
Am I all right?
Yeah, you're great.
Now you are. Okay, so now let's see what's going on with Susan.
Yeah, Susan's lagging. Okay. Susan, can you switch Wi-Fi? Can you switch to the faculty one? The one without the numbers? Maybe that one's stronger. Okay. All right. So while we're sorting Susan out, Robin and I will continue chatting, and hopefully Susan will get her Wi-Fi sorted in a second. Although it looks like I might have frozen as well. Robin, can you hear me? Okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. All right. So kick it off then. One of the questions people tend to ask most, so people say strength or strengths. What do we mean by that? What do we mean when we start talking about strengths? Can you explain that for me?
Well, it's really interesting because it has become more and more of an issue as it becomes more and more discussed. So I notice when I'm doing a lit review that people use a lot of strengths based with that extra S in there. And I think that came out of the Strengths Finder, the work that was done by the Cliftons, and really our character strengths. While Susan and I also include character strengths, we're looking at strength, and I'm going to share my screen for just a minute, if that's okay. There it is. Okay. Let's see. I think there's too many things going on is what's happening here. Let's see. How do I get it to go into slideshow? There we go. That if we look at strength, it's being strong. What makes you feel good? What makes you feel capable? What may give you the butterflies of excitement, but not the butterflies of anxiety and fear and concern that you won't measure up? In other words, your strength is that quality that you have when you feel, look down in the synonyms, when you feel that you have a forte or an aptitude, a skill, something that you can share or not, but that makes you feel good. So that's what I think strength is. And what happens, and now we can take that share away maybe, or not. But what happens is we talk about it a lot, and you see a school says we have a strength-based curriculum. What does that mean? Or we have a strength-based philosophy, or we're all about strengths. And what would you see? I think what we're going to talk about most today is what would you see in a classroom if it was strength-based? And how do you do that? Because it's easy to use the word, it's easy to conceptualize a strength, but in our world today, because emotions are so involved, we tend to want to fix whatever's wrong. We tend to want to bring things up to where they need to be, rather than see how far we can go above that. Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you so much.
All right, I've got a kitty who is very strength-based here. She has a lot to share, let me tell you.
Oh, wonderful. We love kitties. So, so
There's
Robin,
Susan.
yay. Hey, Susan, you're back. Wonderful.
Well, I'm on, my computer never hooked up,
Okay.
but I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah. So Susan is not actually called Stephanie. So
Right.
Robin was just filling us in about what we meant when we say strengths. So how do we find strengths? So now we know what they are. How on earth are we going to identify them?
The easiest thing in the world is to ask. You know, when do you feel good? When do you feel right, balanced, able? What do you like to share? And what piques your curiosity? And how can you take that little curiosity and expand it into an interest and then a strength? So I guess my vote, Susan, would be ask.
There's informal ways of just noticing. I think people only notice when things are amok, when kids are not doing well, when you're having a problem, but you forget to ask yourself, what a great day we had today. This child just excelled today. I wonder why that is. I decided to use drama in literature class, and this child never said anything until we improv'd the characters in Macbeth. I ought to write that down, but I ought to let the parents know. This child came alive, but we're not in that kind of environment. The parents hear when the child does something wrong. We pay attention to, oh my goodness, this child needs some sort of remediation. But there's so much our children are doing right. And if we look at them and observe them, we'll notice patterns. We'll notice every time this child is allowed to pontificate, to be the lecturer for the day, to talk about what he or she knows, is now the camera doesn't work.
Oh, no, it is.
Every time they, and it's amazing what we're able to discover about strengths, interests, and talents just by watching and noticing and jotting things down. We could be more formal, and at Bridges Academy, we are more formal as well. There are particular tools we use to look at students' interests and learning preferences and their personality profiles. We're really, really very good at collecting all kinds of information. And so are other places. They said, oh, we collect that information. But what we find happens is that you have an awful lot of information. What should we do with it? And I think that's where Robin and I have spent an awful lot of time figuring out what should you do with the information.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, and it reminds me of that story that I printed out about Jay Leno, that story that you found. And he said he had just wonderful teachers. He wouldn't be in show business without them. And he was remembering his English teacher, Mrs. Hawk, who said to him one day, because he wasn't a particularly good student.
He was dyslexic and never did his homework and was really barely getting by in school.
Right. And that teacher noticed that he was always telling jokes in the hall. And she said, you know, you're out there and you're cracking up your friends. Why don't you write them down? And he said, well, that sounds a lot like homework. And she said, well, no, just write those stories down and then you can tell the class. So it never seemed like homework when he could write down his jokes. And he did read them. And he said for the first time in his life, his homework was enjoyable. So he'd write it down and then he'd practice, then he'd cross it out, and then he'd write it again. And then she'd have him stand up in front of the class and read the stories. Maybe he'd get a few laughs, and she'd say, and one day she said, you know, maybe you could be a comedy writer or something. Now, isn't that a great story? He said that was a real eye-opener. And I think that's what we're saying, what you were talking about, Susan, is just noticing, calling easy attention to something.
And giving what you notice. Sometimes talents get hidden as challenges, but noticing the right side of that challenge. What if a child is always giving you excuses about why they haven't done their homework? Do you realize that's an extraordinary example of a talent in divergent thinking? No, turn in your homework and get it in, but you could say at the same time, wow, you're a creative thinker. Maybe you can write a book, 50 reasons, 50 excuses for not doing your homework. That's the attitude, that's the approach. We make, we look for talent, we see it hiding out, sometimes in misbehaviors, sometimes by accident, and knowing that this is information that can help us plan a strength-based, talent-focused approach to parenting and teaching.
Oh, that's so cool. Yes. So we've got to look and ask those questions. I love that. So just a reminder for our attendees, if you have questions for Susan or Robin, please pop them in the Q&A so that we can address them while we're having our conversation. Okay. All right. So I'm loving the fact there are lots of comments coming in the chat. And so please feel free to share your thoughts on what's being said and contribute to our conversation. So why then are we addressing strengths, interests, and talents, or should I say, why are addressing strengths, talents, and interests essential? What would you say is the argument for starting with strengths? Because I know that's what we do here.
Well, who's starting this one, Robin? You want me to start first? Well, the first thing I want to say, why wouldn't we? I mean, it's really masochistic not to do that. If I'm teaching, I know that I want the kids, when I'm a teacher, I want an audience with me. Teaching is really a marketing skill today. We have a lot of things interfering with our agenda, if you will. And so we really need to understand, how do we sell our product? And what is that hook that's going to engage our children? Because to get them to want to learn, to be happy to be in school, it's got to be a personal reason for them. They've got to find enjoyment in it. If we stress what they can't do, it builds the anxiety. It makes them feel that they, are not very good at learning. And so emotionally, they're not ready to learn. So if we want them motivated, emotionally ready to learn, experiencing the joy of success, of course, we want to start with strength.
And I think we also want them to try things, to be open to experimentation. And it isn't, failure is not a problem if you learn from it and you go to the next stage. But if you are put in a position where that's all you can do, and you can't show something that you are capable of and enjoy, that there's no light in your eyes, and then you aren't willing to fail. You have to play safe all the time. That's right. And that doesn't let you keep going.
Right. Oh, I like that, being open. Being open. I guess not only do the children need to be open, but so too do us as educators and parents.
Well, think of that, because when you're open, you're like the strong man. And when you're closed and in a shell, you're not able to expand and grow.
Ooh,
I just observed this today. I'm at school today at Bridges Academy, and I was watching the teacher working in our online high school. And these high school kids have to do a math project. And this child said, I hate math. I'm not doing the math project. There's nothing I'm interested in, because he was saying you can brainstorm. Let's brainstorm all these wonderful things. He says, well, I'm just not interested in math. So the teacher said, well, what are you interested in? He says, well, I kind of like art and I kind of like computer games. And he said, well, last semester we had a student in my math class who was an artist and interested in art. And she thought she couldn't do any math project. And then she realized she was going to do an analysis of her artwork. And she's going to figure out what colors she uses the most, how many hours she spends on a particular piece. And before you know it, she had one chart and one graph and one wonderful, wonderful project, all about a mathematical analysis of her own art. And she got excited and she couldn't believe how math was important. It's not such a hard thing to do if you just are willing to help kids along with how do you get their strengths to get them engaged in the curriculum.
So I think it is a hard thing. I think that if it was an easy thing, it would be embedded in every lesson. And the reason I'm saying that is because listening to you, there's sparkle. Listening to you, I know that the student is going to be more engaged, is going to learn more, and is going to be excited about learning. I also know from listening to you that the teacher is more engaged, and the teacher is going to go home feeling like, wow, I did a great thing today. So if it's win-win, why aren't we doing it? Sorry, Maria, that was your question, but I just jumped right in.
Yeah, that's true. Why aren't we doing?
I don't know. I think the reason is that people don't, to just use their strengths. We decided that at Bridges Academy, we needed to be much more systematic in how this happens and much more purposeful, and not just do this accidentally, but strategically. And so I went, and I'm in classrooms a lot, and I watched our teachers at Bridges work with the kids. And I noted that there were 4 different ways that our teachers were using strengths. And Rob, you want me to stop?
No, I'm just gonna
Okay.
show. I'm just gonna show this.
Robin and I actually turned these ways into this little model, and then checked with the teachers to make sure we do agree that these are the ways that we use strengths. And so we now have Bridges strength-based talent-focused teaching model, which begins with knowing their strengths, talents, and interests as a solid foundation. And that's what we do, that systematically, formally, and informally. But if you don't have this knowledge, the strength-based pillars have nothing to stand on. So we need to always start with that.
And the other part of that solid foundation is not just that the teachers know it, but that it's shared freely so that peers know it. There's a social emotional component here as well.
Yeah, and we know that people in our community have different talents they bring to the table, just like a good company does. If you want the best productivity, you've got to bring your talent to the table, not your weakness. And so the four, I'll briefly go over what those 4 ways are. And I gave you an example just a minute ago of engaging students through their strengths. So this is when you're trying to get them to do a math project and they're not interested in math, or you want them to study the Civil War and they couldn't care less about it. All they want to do is math. And you want them to produce, and a lot of our kids don't produce. And you want them, to work with others, but they they aren't always comfortable in working with their peers. So what we try to do when we decide, look, I am teaching this unit, you got to do this math project. It's what my curriculum says. I'm not changing the outcome, but I'm going to give you lots of choices to try to get you to Rome on any path you want to get there. Because if I know what the outcome should be, some of them are going to do the accelerated route and do the direct route. Some are going to take a little scenic route along the way. Some are going to experience all kinds of projects. Some are going to look for different resources. It's really, really an exciting event when you're sitting around with a group of teachers, and we might say that we're going to study the Civil War, but I have a lot of artists in my classroom. So art teacher, would you come and think of some activities that would really engage that artistic mind? Can you give me some ideas of authentic art projects to do for that Civil War that I could give them a choice? Can I use talent groups in this unit where I put all my artists together and all my builders together and all my writers together and all my performing artists, and they work together on an extraordinary project for this unit? Look at all the different ways that I could use the strengths of the kids in my class to engage in the unit that's I've decided, or the school has decided that I need to teach. So that's a major way and an easy way to begin to use the kids' strengths and the choices you provide.
Works at home too.
Can you give an at-home example, do you think?
Oh, if I want if I want them to go with me to help at the store, maybe it's counting. Maybe it's comparing. So we have soup on the list, but how many kinds of soup are there? What should we try? Because I have an explorer in my group. I have a risk taker. Why are we going down the regular aisle? Why aren't we in the different kinds of foods around the world?
Ooh, oh yeah, because there are lots of aisles in supermarkets that have.
They aren't just the same. So if my explorer, that's a strength, then help me make an interesting foray to the grocery store.
Okay, cool. So okay, so that's brilliant. So we're being asked for examples. For instance, one of our attendees said, for gifted hands-on learners. That's quite a specific category. What type of school or classroom setting works best for them? So what should those teachers be bringing in, since those children?
Hands-on learning, we want learning centers, interest centers, a lot of, you would hope they have maker space in the classroom where kids can build three-dimensional models. One of the things we talk about is you have a kid who loves to make things and is a builder and they're learning Shakespeare. Couldn't they build a model of the set for scene one and underline in scene one all the clues that they need to know what that set design should look like? And so that when you have a lot of kids who need to move and need to build and have their hands busy, think about what are those elements of the topic you're talking about. And if I'm talking about Shakespeare, putting on plays, one of the things you need to do is to build the set, design the costumes, that kind of thing.
Awesome. I love that. What we hear a lot, and this is popping up in the chat too, is that teachers are they just don't have time. They're already overwhelmed. They're in crowded classrooms. How on earth are they going to do strength-based learning? Isn't it just more work?
Well, I don't think I don't think it's more work at all. I was in a 5th grade classroom and the teacher simply said to the kids, you know, we're going to learn about the Middle Ages today. And I have some books on the Middle Ages over in the corner. There's a video that I put in a link to it in our classroom online site. And there are websites, or I'm going to do a little talk on it. Tell me, this is what I need you to learn today. Go find the way that you want to learn it. So is there more work for the teacher? Well, I have to plan these activities, but I think that all you have to do is go on the internet and spend 5 minutes and you get all kinds of resources. I do it all the time when I need to give an example in my graduate classes. Here's an idea, I have no idea, and it takes me 5 minutes to find a host of ideas if I know what I'm looking for. Giving children choice is a good thing. And
I want to interrupt with one of the most enlightening moments that I have had is that what is it we want at the other end? And when you say this is so much work and it's going to take so much time ahead, but we really want our kids to learn. So Susan and I were in Chile, and we were working with young teachers. And this is a Catholic country. We were at a Catholic university. And we were doing a unit, we were talking to them about the Middle Ages. And Susan was dividing them up into groups, and she was saying, well, give me some facts about the Middle Ages. There were 30 in this room. And we got no facts. Now, a Catholic country, Middle Ages, the church plays a major part in this. And so finally, Susan said, hey, consult your phones. It's okay. We just need a few facts about the Middle Ages. Can you tell us about the system? So she went on and then divided the class into groups and how they would present their information at the end, choice. And at the end of a half an hour, when they presented to the group, we asked them if they would ever forget the Middle Ages. And the answer was no. So they had forgotten the traditional way, but I am betting you, in fact, money back guarantee, if we went to Chile today and we looked those teachers up, they could tell us all about that lesson.
it's interesting. I have taught the graduate course in creativity at University of Connecticut for many, many years. And I always did this one little activity. They had to teach vocabulary through drama. And one of the words in this play, it was a play with all these interesting words in it. And one of them was periwinkle. And so different people in the class always have to take a role, act out one of those words. Today, 30 years later, I'll see one of them and they'll go, periwinkle, and they'll start acting out periwinkle. They will never forget that word ever because they had to put on a play all around this word. I think that when we have a variety to how we teach, it keeps me interested as a teacher. I begin to recognize many more talents in my students, and learning is enhanced. So should we get to the second way we use strengths before we run out of time?
You think so? Let's see if we can do this. There you go.
Okay.
Leverage them.
Sometimes we're really interested in having kids grasp a concept that's being difficult. So in the first instance, we weren't worrying about what they can't do. We were just giving them lots of opportunities to show off their talent, to showcase all that's good about them. But sometimes we need to spend time working on areas that need to grow. And so let's say that you have a very visual learner, you have that young artist in the classroom who's having difficulty writing, but not visual storytelling. And so using their visual storytelling ability and having them make a storyboard as an advanced organizer for writing is a way to get at that challenging area aligned to how that child's brain works. That child who thinks in pictures, who can tell stories based on pictures, then can put the words to those pictures that could be then put on a page. And so Robin could tell a story about music and math. and
Well, or let's just, because I want you to get to that next slide, which is my favorite, but let's just think that's backwards of the Jay Leno. So Jay Leno wanted to talk his jokes. He wanted to be able to speak, but the teacher said, great, now write them down so you can practice and deliver them. So they took his strength area and helped him begin to write and edit.
And so that's with in mind, I'm going to help you use what you're good at to help you get better at something that you may not be good at. So that's the purpose of leveraging strengths for skill development.
And just think of Leno, who never did his homework, and now he wanted to do his homework. So pillar 3.
This is what we call dual differentiation, or differentiation times 2. When we talk about twice exceptional children especially, they have what we call yellow and blue traits. The yellow ones are the characteristics of students with advanced abilities. And they have a need for intellectually stimulating information. They often already know what's going to be taught, and they have a need for novelty. They may need to learn at a faster pace. They may need more depth and complexity in their assignments. Some of them need to be accelerated. And so when we think about those children in a lesson, we need to think about, do we need to differentiate up? Do I need to do something to this assignment that makes it more aligned to their intellectual ability? We all think about these things, especially with gifted kids, but with 2E kids, at the same time, you have to ask yourself, is this lesson going to be obstructed by something they can't do? If I give them an advanced novel to read because they can read things at their grade level, but I'm still asking them to write the essay, I'm not helping. I forgot that I better also give them a choice of how to tell me what that book was about. So I have to differentiate twice in the level of material or what I'm asking them to read, differentiate up, and make sure that if I really want to know if they got the idea, the big idea of the book, I don't care if they write it or not, find a way to get them to tell me what they know in a way that does not get challenged by what they can't do. Dual differentiation.
And the final pillar
is both our favorites.
Yes, this is the good one. And before we start, when we people think that starting with strengths is easy, and in this one it kind of is, because when a child isn't doing well, Susan often says, just give them a healthy dose of a TDO. And a TDO is a talent development opportunity.
Sometimes things are, stressful for these kids, and we've tried everything. We've tried to give them more support. We've tried to make learning more attractive. They're just not there. And so sometimes we just take them out of the curriculum and let them work on something that they really want to work on, and let them engage that way. But that's a special case of this whole pillar. At Bridges Academy, what we are known for is the amount of time that we expend during a given week on enrichment and focus and talent development in and of itself. Every Friday in the elementary school, kids are in enrichment clusters, which they choose. They actually apply, like there's a job fair, and they apply for the cluster they'd like to be in, and they tell the person who's going to run that cluster what talents they can bring to that cluster. We do big master 2-week projects between intersessions for the middle school and the elementary school. We have a badges program where high school kids work on different levels of growing from novice to expert. We have extracurricular activities that we call curricular, and in each of these opportunities is where we embed executive function skills. This is where if they really buy into something, we had a chicken club, we had a little boy who never wrote, but he was worried about the chickens and he wanted to write a manual of how to take care of the chickens during the summer. So he said, can you make sure my writing is understandable and my words are spelled correctly? People need to be able to read my manual. This is when it happens. And Robin has a favorite slide about that. Is it there, Robin?
It is. It's always here. And I've been reading a little bit of what's going by in the questions, and this is going to be the philosophical shift in your head. And that is that the big E, we talk about 2E, 3E, all the E's, that big E is what leads to achievement, not the other way around. Enrichment is not an extra. Enrichment is not a reward for getting better somewhere else. Enrichment itself is how we engage kids, how we get them to enjoy learning and bring enthusiasm, and also, the willingness to, as Rachel McAnally says, to stay in the struggle. Now, isn't that what we want? We don't do it by working on what they're not good at. We get that kind of engagement and enthusiasm and willingness to keep on trying. In other words, get better and achieve through that enrichment idea. And I want you to really wrap your head around the idea of just-in-time learning, which is, if we as the adults in the room are clever enough to keep engaging kids or students through their strength area, through their interest area, then they want to get that interest area better. And if we can connect it, then they're going to learn those skills. Again, I'm going to stay on the same story. It's the Jay Leno. She wants him to do homework. She wants him to write. She put it together, and he had a just-in-time moment. I need to do this if I'm going to get better. Or our chicken club boy, Sam, he needed to make sure that his chickens were taken care of. So he had to be organized and write down what needed to be done.
I love that. And I think that ties in because there are a couple of comments about, particularly in public school, when the children have testing and the teachers are under pressure to ensure that the children can complete certain tasks. So one of the questions was, how does this translate into public school testing, particularly if kids are studying different things than what there will be tested on in standardized tests? So, which is also to say, is it feasible to have kids pursue their strengths when teachers often have the pressure to teach a circumscribed curriculum?
Let me give you one more slide, and then I'm going to take the sharing off. But if you were in a business world, and isn't education to prepare
Mhm.
for what you do later in life, and you saw this, if a manager or a leader works on the people in his group through their strengths, there is an increase of 36.4% productivity. If the entry point is through weakness, what aren't you doing well? And what do you need to get better? There's actually a decrease in productivity. They're focused on what they can't do. They shut down. Look at that. There's over a 60% difference there. Now, if you want success, all of us are going to need to share the power of strengths and not continue in the deficit-based way to do it, just because that's what's happening in the public school.
Well, first of all, one thing is that when you give kids a lot of projects to do that they choose that go along with your curriculum, remember that first, among all of them, we are not going away from the curriculum. We're finding them ways to engage in the curriculum that's meaningful to them. The more interesting learning within a curricular unit, the better the mind and their brain is. Their working memory can function if they've already had these other kinds of experiences, because that's how their brain is wired. And they will do better on a written test. They'll do better on an essay if they've already presented their project to the class. They do better at persuasive writing if Sam then decided he wanted more chickens and wrote a proposal to the head of school with all these wonderful reasons why they need more chickens. You get him to write a persuasive essay because it's in the English curriculum, he learns nothing. He's writing a persuasive essay to buy more chickens. He is the most convincing young man today, and he convinced anybody of anything. And so to say they're not going to get better on a test because you are teaching them in a way that's better is not doing your homework and knowing how kids learn.
I love that. So we have to know how children learn, and then it will translate into everything else. I also think it's vitally important to reiterate that what Susan said is that we're not getting away from the curriculum. We're not teaching them things that are not in the curriculum. We're giving them a door into the curriculum so that they can access it and be more engaged in their learning. I love that. I think that it is really, really brilliant. I know that our time is coming up, and I don't know why this hour just seems to vanish so quickly, and we still have several questions. One of them was, how do you balance nurturing and utilizing strengths while still developing challenge areas?
Well, through talent development and through leveraging strengths. And sometimes if they absolutely need a special reading program, you engage them in that too. But if you take them away from all fun things in the summer, so you go to Linda Mood Bell to learn to read, you're going to have a pretty depressed child. Don't take away that talent development time and that enrichment. Make sure the summer has both in it for that child. They need to feel smart. They need to be with other kids who are good in what they're good at, so they know they have community. They need to feel valued, and they need to feel like they can learn. And so it's really important to make sure that you balance their experiences, so they're not feeling like all we're doing is focusing on what they can't do.
I'd like to up the ante. I'll raise you one and say that we need to make sure that every child has an opportunity to do something satisfying and that in a learning mode, but satisfying and enriching every day, so that it becomes a joy to go to school, to see what more you can do, what more you can learn, not to be just digging that hole of, I'm never going to get out of here. And Susan and I, true confessions here, Susan and I can't sing. It's sort of a contest to see which of us is worse. And no, not even close. When I was young in church, they used to turn around and say, could you just hum? I mean, complete strangers. So we talk sometimes because we say, aren't we the luckiest people in the world that singing is not part of the core curriculum? Because if it was, we would be shamed every day. And do you think we'd get better? I don't think so. I've invested in singing lessons. I mean, one guy wouldn't even take my payment. So we want to be sure that there's that joy and the willingness to keep trying in a way that we can be successful.
Even just making our kids aware of their strengths, just that. I was working with the kids up at our campus in Seattle a couple of months ago, and I taught them about their personality profiles. And one of them found out he was a creative problem solver and a people person. And he was very happy about that. And he could give me examples of why he thought that was a good thing. That weekend, he was going off to a college campus where they were doing Model UN, and he was in a group. And the group was arguing, and he's usually reticent in the group. And he said to his mom, I remembered I'm a people person and a creative problem solver. It's up to me to step in and get the people in this group to get along. And by gosh, it worked. Wow. What are you going to say about that?
Oh my gosh. So by knowing how you learn, you can then do some learning. Isn't that brilliant? I love that.
Because we're paying attention to the talents that these kids have naturally, to how their brains are wired, and to where they can excel. And that's got to be at the heart of who they are. And we will fix the other things.
Yeah. On that, because are we just ignoring their deficits? Are we just ignoring those problems?
Sometimes
going to go away?
I mean, we have a graduate student who just did her paper on dyscalculia, and she interviewed gifted adults who suffered with dyscalculia all through their lives, and they found get-arounds. And she said, because dyscalculia, like color blindness, you cannot remediate it away.
Right.
One of the favorite things from that dissertation is there's a woman who says, how do I know the speed limit? Do I know where 25 is on the dial? It says 20 and it says 30. So she had to take the most common speed things and put an overlay on her speedometer. Now, those are the kinds of workarounds that we want people to have.
What about the music? I love that. There's one who's very good in music and didn't know how long things take, and she measured time by how long a song lasts. I mean, that's how you get better. You use your strengths. You use your strengths to figure out a get around. And so strengths are the vital critical component in one's psyche.
You know what?
Knowledge of them, you will never thrive, because your best asset you're ignoring.
You know what? That is a super deluxe example that we should put in leveraging strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, good work, Susan.
Good work, Ashley. We're very excited. We have our graduate school for cognitive diversity and education, and these are the kinds of courses we have: how to use strengths, the kinds of dissertations that people do. And we keep learning more and more because we have wonderful, wonderful graduate students who are some of them with lived experiences, some of them already doing good work in the field. And Robin and I keep learning more and more as we develop these pillars. We're writing more information about them. We're opening up a strength-based assessment lab where we're going to be able to give people strength-based reports. It's growing. It needs to be more universal. We really need to, to get people to pay much more attention to strengths than they seem to do.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much, Robin. One of our viewers is all the way in Australia, and I think it links on what you just said. She said, I'm interested in learning more about embedding executive function skills. So can she join the grad school to find that out?
Sure, it's online, so she can be right here with us. Bridges, go to bridges.edu, where you'll find all these things, our center activities, our Bridges Media, the academic school, and the graduate school as well.
Okie dokie. I can't believe it. We've barely got 1 minute left. Robin, your final comment, please.
That our strength-based assessment lab is opening in September, and that we will be hopefully offering parents and schools and professionals ways to shift in their mind and begin to see what's right.
Awesome. So this is literally the beginning of the strength-based learning conversation. I think that our viewers need to communicate with you both further in order to take up the offer of joining our strength-based labs so that they can help their students, because we had lots of questions that unfortunately we ran out of time and we didn't get to. So can you tell them once more how to get in touch with you and learn more about strength-based learning?
Well, the easiest way, I think, is to go through Kim Vargas, who gives us who sorts out what the questions are and hooks everybody up to the right person. And she is at our TUI Center with Maria. And Kim is also connected with the graduate school and professional development. So if you have a question, and Robin would be the one to answer it, she'll direct it. If you need more information about Bridges Academy or the strength-based learning, she knows how to do it. She's like the old switchboard. Okay, this is what you want to know. Here you go. And she's delightful to talk to. So it's Kim Vargas at kim.vargas, V-A-R-G-A-S, at bridges.edu. But I think on the website is a way to get in touch with the center. Is there not, Maria?
Yes, most definitely. So you can get in touch with the centre through bridges.edu. It has been my pleasure. I cannot believe we are out of time. Robin and Susan, you have been phenomenal, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. Viewers, if our guests during this season have made a difference to you and your family, please email me and share. Our email is crucialconversations@2ecenter.org. I also want to say a very special thank you to John and to Stephanie, who work tirelessly behind the scenes. Thank you both for all of your hard work and your expertise, and most definitely your patience. Trust me, they are the reason that this webcast happens. So this month, we have a second episode. Our second episode will be on May 24th in conjunction, with Seng's Mental Health Awareness Month. So we'll have a panel who will be sharing their strategies to handle stress. And I know if you're a parent or you're a teacher, or in fact, if you're a human, stress is a big thing, and unfortunately, stress is also a big killer. So I suggest that you join me and my guests, one of whom will be a student, and find out about how to de-stress and how to move forward with positivity and enlightenment. So please join the discussion and let us all continue to make a difference. I look forward to chatting with you all on May 24th. So make sure that you join me.